Okay, so let's talk about late childhood. So, late childhood is ages 6 to 12, and this is also called pre adolescence. Um, there's a thing that people say now, with the girl, especially with the kids' ages 10, 11, and 12, that they're tweens. They're in between childhood and adolescence. But late childhood is 6 to 12, and it's also called pre-adolescence. So physical development slows down. Kids kind of there's a long stretch where they're gonna grow taller, they're gonna gain weight, they're going to get better muscle coordination. Obviously, if you take a 9-year-old and you put them on a soccer field with a 6-year-old, the 9-year-old is going to be able to dominate a 6-year-old because there's muscle coordination, speed. They are they're you're at your best. I mean, your visual acuity is at your best if it's normal development. I mean, obviously, some kids have to wear glasses, and that's normal too for them. Um, it's not normal to have bad eyesight when you're a child, but um, it's not a terrible thing either. You can still hit all your milestones. Um, it's Their permanent teeth are coming in. It should all be done by the time you're 12. You have 12-year molars, and then after that you have wisdom teeth, but that's not until later on in adolescence. Um, they have good motor and sensory coordination. This is when they're all playing sports, right? You start playing soccer or hockey or, lacrosse. They don't really start kids in those sports much earlier than 5 because you have to have a certain amount of motor and sensory coordination. Mental development, children at this age, it's all about school. Their speech skills come along. They learn to read. They learn to write. They begin to understand more abstract concepts such as loyalty and honesty, values and morals. So this is when parents really have to be teaching their children the values that they need for later on in life. But children will sometimes make judgments that against a value that their parents have taught them, and it's it teaches them a lesson. They get in trouble, they're grounded or whatever. They're more adept at making judgments, but those judgments aren't always solid. Emotional development is different too. At age 6, children are often frightened and uncertain as they begin school. Reassuring parents and success help kids gain self-confidence. So even if you have a young child who fails some, like a spelling test, you just tell them, look, these were hard words. You did your best. We'll keep working on it. You got to keep reassuring them or else they'll quit. Gradually, fears are replaced by the ability to cope, and emotions are more, controlled than they are when they're young. By ages 10 to 12, sexual maturation and changes in body functions can lead to periods of depression and then periods of joy. Kids can feel restless and anxious, and it's difficult to understand them, but you have to stay with them, reassure them, provide comfort, and help them cope. There's nothing you can do about it, so you have to help them cope. Social development, social changes are evident during these years. Okay, they start to really like being with their friends. 7-year, like for instance, 7-year-olds tend to like activities they can do by themselves and not usually in groups. But by the time they get to 8 to 10, kids are more interested in working with groups. Not every child is like that. Again, there's always a spectrum, but for most children at this age group, is where they see that children like to work with groups. So, and you're talking about a range. Some 8-year-olds are like, yeah, bring on the group. And some kids are not like that till they get to be 10 years old. So everybody matures at their own rate. But these are the things you want to start seeing. You have children that want to spend more time with their friends that are their own age than the time they spend with their parents. And that's totally normal too. They're dependent on themselves. So, for instance, when you have children in this age group, you can bring them to, when I took my grandchildren last year to the pool, they were ages 6 to 10. And I just sat there and watched them. They wanted to play with their friends and they were completely independent. So the only time they really wanted me to interact with them was when they wanted me to interact with them. And, I taught a couple of them to swim, jump in the pool. But for the most part, they just wanted to be with their friends and have fun. And the needs in this group include the same basic needs of infancy and early childhood. They need food, safety, shelter, reassurance, parental approval, and peer acceptance. Adolescence. So adolescence is kind of a traumatic time for some, well, for a lot of kids. Physical changes occur dramatically in the early period of adolescence. You go through puberty, and that's the period of growth and development in when secondary sex characteristics begin to develop. And you guys remember that from HSC2. In girls, they develop breasts, their hips get wider, they get their period, and in boys, they develop hair under their arms. Their voice deepens, and there's usually a growth spurt. And because there's a growth spurt, the motor and nerve responses they don't advance as quickly, and that's why you have teenagers that can be clumsy and awkward, and it's just normal. They have their motor and nerves are not coordinated. So the growth spurt that usually occurs anywhere from 11 to 13 in girls and ages 13 to 15 in boys. Now, sometimes you can have a boy that has early puberty, but most of the times it's 13 to 15. Okay, mental development, and that is something that you guys are finding out now. You are able to learn, memorize, take responsibility for your actions, sharpen your skills, develop your abilities. You respond more and more to peer groups. Most adolescents want to spend time with their friends. You start to develop your self-identity and where you're going to go. You want to gain more control of your feelings and become more mature emotionally. And you'll see a big, huge, widespread development in that. I mean, think about when you walk into the freshman building and the 14-year-olds are hanging out in the lobby. Whereas, you guys are seniors and you have a very different relationship with your peers than, ninth graders. I remember the homecoming dance. I always laugh when I go to the homecoming dance because you can tell the freshmen because there's little packs of little boys and they're running all over the dance. They're not, whereas the older kids are like actually dancing. So they just aren't where you guys are and they need that time to develop. Emotional development. So emotional development is really important in adolescence, and things can interfere with it. Kids they have conflicts. They feel inadequate at times, and they're always measuring each other. Who's the cool kid, who has the best clothes, who's the smartest in the class. They feel their greatest fear is being embarrassed in front of other kids. So you have to support adolescents, and you need, adolescents need support. They need understanding and reassurance. This is a time when chemical abuse can start, and if you start, then your development starts to depend on these drugs or alcohol, and it changes the path that you're on. It can it can cause emotional and psychological problems. For instance, chemical addiction can produce instant gratification, and you know, adolescents who take drugs often are looking for that. Any kind of anxiety, they have to relieve it. So there's instant gratification. Suicide, which is found in many life stages, has become one of the leading causes of death in adolescence. I find that to be so tragic. I just, how we got to this place, I'm not really sure. But I worry about the kids, especially with the social media. And adolescents are impulsive. They don't think about what they're doing. They don't think about the consequences sometimes. And it is a huge tragedy for their families. So you guys should all be paying attention to each other, sudden changes in appetites, withdrawal, depression, excessive fatigue or agitation, neglect of personal hygiene, alcohol or drug abuse, losing interest in hobbies and sports, preoccupation with death, children who self-harm, giving away possessions, and social withdrawal from family and friends. If you feel that way, or friends that feel that way, you should reach out to them, find out, how they are. There's lots of services out there for adolescents who are considering suicide. It is just a really difficult time, and this is the time when students don't, people don't have the ability to stop impulsive decisions sometimes. All right, let's see what we have next. So we have early adulthood next, so I'll be back.